You are listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
The Archaeology Podcast Network is sponsored by Codify, a California benefit corporation. Visit Codify at www.codifi.com.
Welcome to the 49th episode of the Archaeotech Podcast. This is Chris Sims, and I've got my co-host, Chris Webster, with me. Today we're joined by Ben Marwick as he talks about open science and archaeology and his workshop at the upcoming SAA conference in Vancouver.
Okay, welcome to the Archaeotech Podcast, everyone. We've got a recurring guest on, Mr. Ben Marwick, and how's it going, Ben?
Yes, fine, thank you.
Good.
Great to be back.
Yeah, well, we had Ben. There's a link in the show notes to the last episode we had him on. It was episode 40, and the title was Ben Marwick and Coding at the SAAs, where we talked about some interesting things that your Ben and his partners are planning on for the upcoming SAAs in Vancouver at the end of March of this year. And I'm looking forward to, hearing more about that when it finally goes down. We'll be in Vancouver as well. Chris and I will, so maybe we can talk to you about it there and see how it went. But if you want to hear more about that, go back and look at episode 40. Like I said, it's in the show notes. Or you can try out the relatively new search function we have over at the APN, where you can pretty much search anything within a particular show on the show page, or just on the main page. You can search the entire APN and all of our shows, and it's pretty slick. So. All right. Well, we're talking right now to Ben again because as a result of what he's been doing with that last podcast where we talked about a little bit, there's a new resurgence to get the Open Science Interest Group into the SAAs. So Ben, why don't you tell us a little about what the Open Science Interest Group is, and then we'll get into the recently published paper.
Yeah, sure. So within the Society for American Archaeology, there's been for a long bunch of interest groups that relate to sort of special areas of archaeology. I think there's zooarchaeology and geoarchaeology and public archaeology and things like that. And so a bunch of us were thinking that this might be a convenient way to kind of take advantage of the community of the SAA and find other people who are out there who are doing the sort of things that some of us are already doing and encourage them to sort of share what they're doing with us, and then we can share stuff with them and create a bit more of a sort of community and a movement where we can more easily find out what everyone else is doing and kind of improve the way we're doing things, and just try to make archaeology more generally, more open and transparent, because we're seeing, some of us are seeing in other disciplines, especially like physics and astronomy and ecology, the norms of those disciplines are really changing, and these things are kind of become the normal practice. For example, when people publish a paper, and they often deposit the data behind the paper on a repository that's free to access for anyone else. So you can read the paper and then you can download the data and have a bit of a look yourself. And similarly, we see in other fields people not just sharing the data like that, but also code. So they're doing their analysis using a scripting language like Python or R that we chatted about before, and then they're making this code available as well. So in an ideal situation, you can read a paper and then you can get the code and the data that sort of made that paper, and then really dig into it, and you can verify that the paper's claims are true according to the data and the methods, and then you can easily extend the sort of findings of that paper into your own work. So if there's a paper that presents a new method, you can just grab the code that implements that method and apply it to your own data. Or if you want to compare your data to that person's data, it's a fairly trivial thing to do. So some of us are seeing these kind of norms emerge in other fields, and we're thinking that these other fields really benefiting from these practices. Like individual researchers are getting higher citation rates on these kind of practices. Like if they publish a paper that has a data repository, that paper tends to get more citations than an equivalent paper without it. And things seem to be moving faster. People are saying, I just downloaded the code and I ran it and then I found this result. And normally that might have taken that person weeks or months to kind of reverse engineer the methods paper and write the code themselves. So we're seeing these kind of individual and like community benefits, and we're thinking, archaeology could stand to benefit from some of this stuff. So we thought we would try to formalize a community through the SAA interest group structure, and we there's a fairly strict kind of set of rules you have to follow to start one of these. You can't just kind of have a meeting at a bar and declare interest group. So we followed the rules, and we got a petition going, and we made a kind of application to the board of the SAA, and they approved that a few months ago. And then they kind of requested that, as part of the process of establishing the interest group, that we publish a short note in the SAA archaeological record to kind of announce the formation of the group and tell the community broadly kind of what we stand for, and let them know how they can get involved. So that's what we've just got done now, and it was really so. I'll just give you a quick kind of overview of the paper.
Yeah.
And I'm really, it's been quite an interesting process. We've got about 45 authors, I think, the exact count, I'm not sure. So everyone who petitioned the interest group, and a few other people who I know are working in this way, I just got everyone together and said, okay, what are the, let's sort of settle on the core things that we really want other archaeologists to know about, because there's a lot to consider in the sort of world of open science, and there's a lot of sort of economic and personal and political issues that are part of open science, and we just wanted to kind of narrow the focus onto things that we thought were going to have the biggest impact on the most amount of people. Like things that they could easily do that would change, improve their own work and improve archaeology generally. So let me give you a quick rundown of what we came up with.
Okay.
So yeah, I mentioned open science is like this broad church of all kinds of things, and we've tried to filter it down to just these three elements that we think archaeology's got. There's a lot of bang for buck to be got in archaeology. So the first one is open access, and this is really, it's a bit of a big thing, a big issue, and there's a lot of strong feelings around it. And there are journals that an open access journal is one that the author pays. So firstly, you go through the peer review process, and if your paper is accepted, then you must pay the journal a sum of money, and sometimes it's in the order of thousands of dollars, so that they will publish the journal and then make it freely available to the reader. So that's kind of the flip of the normal model, where you submit and publish freely, but then the reader pays a subscription fee, or their institution. So that's what most people think of when they think of open access. But we certainly think that's useful as well, but it's a bit limiting. There are not many journals in archaeology that give that option, and the cost is really high, and our budgets normally don't. That the money that you could pay for an open access journal publication, you could spend on a lot more archaeology, like a lot more field work, a lot more radiocarbon dates or whatever. So we're advocating instead another approach to open access, which is still very common, and it's called using preprints. So that means you could publish your article in any journal that you like, but before the article is published, you submit a copy of your article, which is the last copy that you have control of, the last copy before you send it to the editor for page layout. This is after it's been peer reviewed and accepted. Your copy of typically a Microsoft Word document, you can submit that to a preprint repository. So that's your copy, and the journal doesn't own that. But after the journal takes it and applies its branding and page layout and makes it look really nice and fancy, they own that copy. And really, we're not supposed to do anything with that. A lot of us are posting them on academia.edu and ResearchGate and so on, and that's really handy for circulating papers, but we're a bit unsure about the legality of that. And they could all disappear overnight. If something like Elsevier decides to clamp down on that, that'll just disappear. But a preprint is a more kind of sustainable way to circulate stuff, because that's the copy that you own, and most publishers recognize that. So we're really trying to promote the use of preprints in archaeology, and there are a couple of good repositories that are really well suited to this practice. And in other disciplines like physics and computer science and astronomy, they have this very famous repository called archive.org, which is kind of like the great example of preprints for all other disciplines. And there's one called bioarchive that's similar. So we're advocating that as a kind of, it's free to archaeologists. There's no expensive fees for publication. And it doesn't matter what journal you publish in. Nearly all archaeology journals allow this practice, and it's just going to be a great way to kind of work around the paywall that most of us encounter in journals that we don't have subscriptions to. Mm-hmm. So that's the open access kind of angle that we really want to promote. And there's a really nice repository called SOCH Archive. It's SOCARXIV.org, and that looks like it's going to be really promising for archaeology. I've already seen a bunch of archaeology papers appear there. So it's the first thing, open access, especially preprints, which we think is going to be really good. The second thing, so there are three things. The second thing is quite similar. We're calling it open data, and it relates to kind of open access to data sets. This is a bit, we're kind of waiting a little for community norms to establish around this in archaeology because we're so unaccustomed to sharing data. We're very private and secretive about it. And we have some really great infrastructure like these repositories, TDAR.org and opencontext.org and the Archaeology Data Service in the UK, where places where you can put the data where other people can find it. But many archaeologists are still a bit uncomfortable. They're worried about getting scooped or people sort of, denying them the publications that they should be having because someone will publish something first on the data set. So there's a lot of like, bad feelings, I guess, about open data. So we're sort of trying to tackle that. And I think we're aiming at the moment to encourage people to publish a journal article and then just release enough of the data to support that journal article, like the charts and the tables in that article, just the data that support that. And that way, the scope for scooping, if you like, is pretty narrow because you've kind of if your article is good, then you've kind of dealt with most of the things that can be got out of that article. So we're not saying that you do your field work and then you just dump all of your data onto a public repository for everyone to see. We're saying do it right at the end, after you've got your publication strategy worked out and paper by paper, just trickle out the data to support the paper. And we think that's going to make people feel a bit more comfortable about the potential for being scooped or ripped off or losing the potential for future publication. So that's the kind of strategy we're aiming at with open data. And a few of us are already doing that kind of thing with our journal articles. And in our paper, we talk about these repositories and talk about licensing the data to be really explicit about how people can reuse it, because without a license, really no one can use it. And it's very easy. You just declare that you're going to have a CC0, which is the Creative Commons license. It's very common for data sets in other disciplines. So open data is something we're promoting. It's a little more challenging because there's ethical issues because people or sites can be harmed. If you release a data set full of location information and people find it, then they go to the sites and destroy them or steal things. That can be really bad. So we're kind of encouraging people to be mindful and sensitive in the way they release their data. So I think, for most people, releasing the measurements of the artifacts, that kind of thing is not going to endanger anyone or anything. So there's a lot of scope for open data that isn't going to cause problems, but people who do a lot of intense spatial work need to be really careful about that. So there's good evidence in some other fields that there's a good citation impact for papers that have an open data set that tend to get cited more than others. So there's lots of individualistic kind of reasons for people to consider these behaviors. So now third and final kind of angle that we're taking to promote open science in archaeology is open methods. And so and with this one, we sort of feel like we've covered most of people's activity, the publication, the data, and the way they sort of make the data into a publication. So what we're really talking about here is reproducibility and encouraging people to make available more of their kind of analytical pipeline. And in our paper, we're kind of agnostic about the exact technology that people use. If you've done everything in an Excel spreadsheet, then just share that. That's the method. And if your method was very kind of procedural, then just have a kind of supplementary material that documents, like narrates the process so that another person could realistically kind of recreate it if they want to. But we're a bit opinionated about use of scripting languages in our group. So we sort of feel that, if you share an Excel spreadsheet, that's probably better than not at all. But still, it's likely to be tough for another person to kind of recreate or reconstruct all the steps that got you from, a list of locations or measurements or something to the result of a statistical test. Because, with this kind of graphical programs like Excel, there's a lot of clicking, mouse clicking, and so on that is just ephemeral. There's no tracking of that, and we don't know what options you chose in the sort of drop-down menus for a certain test, and then all that we see is a cell with a number in it at the end. So we sort of feel that they're kind of good. It's better to see that than nothing at all. But we feel that a better practice is to script it, is to write out the instructions in a programming language. And we see a lot of people in other fields doing this now, especially R and Python tend to be the ones that the scientists in other fields are really converged on as kind of easy to use languages for getting science done. You don't get too bogged down in all these weird sort of software engineering details. You can you can quickly get to the point and get a test and get some analysis visualization done with these languages. So we're kind of advocating those. And as we spoke before, it's difficult for archaeologists to learn these because they're not part of our typical undergraduate or graduate program curriculum. So we're going to try bootstrap that by offering them at the SAA, and we're hoping to make this a regular kind of event, this kind of short workshops to get people comfortable and familiar. Of course, we can't teach anything like a comprehensive, knowledge of art, but we can at least lower the burden and lower the barrier and make people feel more comfortable to start finding out for themselves and drawing on some of the excellent online resources to
I think those are incredible, especially the third focus that you just mentioned about open methods. I think you had mentioned that it's not common practice for archaeologists to I guess log their methods as they're doing more of the computer-based work, but I think that that's a good habit to get into because it's consistent with, especially in the publication end of thing, it's consistent with logging our field methods. So that's something that we do as normal practice as archaeologists in other areas of our work. So it would make perfect sense for us to be doing that in our computer end of things. So that's incredible. That's a really great program.
Yeah, thanks. And I think I think it would be hard to find someone to disagree with the idea that if you're writing out your methods in more detail, it's going to make you better. I mean, we generally feel like if you know that someone's going to look at these in the future, you're probably going to do a better job of writing it down in more detail. And even if it's just a sort of definition of attributes or typology or something, it's probably going to end up better for you if you're prepared for someone else to have a look at it. So for most of us, those things are sort of private notes that we never intend to share with anyone. But we're kind of pushing the idea that even if you share it and no one ever looks at it, you're probably going to turn out doing a better job preparing as if someone else was going to have a look, to be transparent. So,
oh, absolutely.
So, we think
helps
there's a
keep
lot
us accountable.
Precisely, yeah. So these are the sort of three prongs of our approach, and we sort of feel that in our paper we talk about some of the specific benefits, to individual archaeologists in the archaeological community, and we can kind of boil that down to, it lowers the friction, I think, of doing archaeology, of looking at some interesting paper and thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to try that. And if all these other bits of the research pipeline are freely available to you, then you can just dip in and easily adapt it to whatever it is you're trying to do. And you don't have to go, oh, that sounds cool, but I've got no idea how I can make it part of what I'm doing because it looks very complicated and I don't have time to dig that deeply into it. So we're seeing it as a way to sort of make progress easier and faster in archaeology and sort of smooth the exchange. So, at the moment you have to write, you look at a paper and you see, oh, interesting data or interesting methods, and then you've got to write to the author and say, look, I'm really interested in your thing, and can you tell me a bit more about how you did it? And then they may not have a good recollection because it might have been 5 years or more ago now, or maybe they may not reply at all because they might be in the field or very busy or not comfortable to share. And it's a bit of a roll of the dice, that this kind of researcher engagement thing. And our feeling is that if we can formalize some of these behaviors and it becomes a matter of course, then it's much more predictable. And if you look at a paper and you're interested, you can just check out the stuff on a repository and easily download it, and you don't have to depend on the availability or the whim of the author and so on. So we're really optimistic. We see a lot of these benefits in other disciplines, and we think archaeology is ripe to benefit as well.
But you might not even be able to contact the author because the way people move around, they might even be at the contact they have in the paper. So
yeah, that's right, and
it's
really true. It can be really difficult, and especially a lot of grad students do amazing work, and then they move into other fields or other institutions, like you say, or even out of archaeology altogether, and that can be really tough to get to the bottom of what they've been up to. So I'd just like to tell you a little bit about what our immediate plans are and what people can do, what an archaeologist could do if they're interested in this kind of thing.
I know. I think we've got some questions for you. Let's take a break real quick.
Oh, okay,
and then
sure.
Then we'll come back and pepper you with questions. And I have questions about doing this within the framework of the SAA.
All right, sounds good.
All right, we'll be back in just a minute.
Great.
At
At digitaltraining.site, we believe that spending money on learning is great if it helps you solve a problem. If you're a cultural resource management professional, you want to make your workflow faster and more efficient to beat your competitors. If you're a student or young professional, you'll want to learn marketable skills to get that job. If you're a faculty, you want to stay up to date with teaching topics, but you feel overwhelmed by all the technologies and tools out there. Digitaltraining.site is for you. You'll get relevant topics by top-level instructors and downloadable materials at an affordable cost. And if you're an enrolled student, apply for a scholarship and attend for free. Start learning now at digitaltraining.site.
All right, we're back. So that was an awesome explanation of what's going on here in the paper. If you get the SAA archaeological record, go check out that paper. Maybe before listening to the rest of this, because then you can have a good understanding of what's going on here. But I have some kind of fundamental questions. It seems like from your discussion that the Open Science Interest Group would be the goal of that group would be to sort of bring these ideas to people who might not know how to do these sorts of things, because the whole concept, I mean, the paper discussing open science is actually in a journal that's only open to members. So, that's kind of an issue right there. I mean, the SAA itself is a relatively closed organization unless you're a member of the SAA. So, aside from just teaching people how to do these things, what do you expect? Do you expect to, in the long run, maybe change something at the SAA about how articles are published in the SAA's journals?
Yes, exactly right. So you point out like a really sort of frustrating kind of, I guess, ironic situation where there, in a lot of fields there are these papers that talk about we've got to be more open and open science for this or that field, and they're published in a closed access journal that only subscribe, and it's always sort of they get a lot of attention on Twitter for this sort of seemingly paradoxical sort of position. And I guess we fall into that a bit as well. But I should say that, because we're sort of talking about preprints, there is, of course, a preprint of this paper that's really available to anyone. So it's not completely shut out to non-members of the SAA. But yeah, we do. Our feeling is kind of to agitate from within the inside. We want to sort of establish ourselves as a serious community to be reckoned with, and that's part of the goal of establishing the interest group, is to show that this is something that serious archaeologists are taking seriously, and this is not kind of a fringe kind of anarchist movement that wants to throw over the SAA or archaeology as we know it. We're all sort of serious professionals, and we just want to sort of push the needle a bit on how normal archaeology is done to get it a little bit more open and transparent. So there are also members of the Open Science Interest Group are also on the SAA Publications Committee, and they're also on the editorial board of other prominent archaeology journals. And we're hoping to start conversations about data sharing policies, for example, and trying to encourage change amongst editorial policies of archaeology journals to promote some of these behaviors. And so one of the things that the Open Science Interest Group will do by itself is to run a program to award badges to people who are demonstrating these open science behaviors in their work. Especially, we're going to focus initially on posters and presentations, especially at the SAA meetings, but it could be any meeting. And we're going to use a badging system that's been developed by the Center for Open Science, and it's used by about I think 1 or 2 dozen journals in psychology mostly, and some political science and economics journals. And the idea is that when you submit your paper, or in our case it will be a poster or a slide deck, and we in the Open Science Interest Group will do what's called a discovery review. So we will have a look at the poster or the slide deck and see, do you have links to data sets in trustworthy repositories? Like a DOI is a very common kind of persistent link to a data set. Do you have those links in there, and can we click on the link and see the data set? And so have you made your data open? And similarly, if you use code or somehow put your methods available, do you have your methods available? And if you kind of pass that test, and I think it's pretty easy to, because it's a pretty low bar, then we'll award you a badge that's sort of derived from the Center for Open Science system, badging system. And that's something you can display on the first slide of your presentation, or on the the bottom right-hand corner where people put their references and acknowledgements and logos and stuff of your poster. And then you can use that as kind of a talking point. When you start your talk, you can say all the materials for this study are openly available on these repositories, and then you can move on. Or when people are looking at the poster, they can say, they might ask, where can I find out more? And you can say, well, you can see from these badges that I've made all the work openly available, so you can freely download it. So that's just a little step we're going to take to increase the visibility of these kind of behaviors. And we're hoping that, we're pushing for this in the journals as well. And so far, the journal Internet Archaeology, which is a very long-running British journal, they've adopted this exact same badges system for their articles. And we're hoping, we're encouraging the SAA to consider this for their journals, and maybe not the badge system, but maybe an actual policy of, a couple of levels of data sharing that each paper must adhere to one of these and make a statement about it. So we're trying to sort of, this is sort of probably a nice expression, but kind of, agitate from within and push for change from within the organization, because we feel that that's the way we're going to affect the largest number of archaeologists. And I agree with you that the SAA is kind of it's very conservative and kind of a closed shop, and there's a lot of senior people who are very comfortable with the way things are, and our goal is to just move the needle a little bit. We don't want to cause a total revolution and really upset everyone. We just want to nudge things towards this direction a bit, and we feel like, as generations change, we will kind of inch our way closer to this being really a central part of archaeological practice. So yeah, I mean, we realize we're sort of there's a lot of entrenched kind of resistance to these behaviors, and we're just hoping to gradually sort of nudge people across to being a bit more open and transparent from within inside the organizations. Yeah.
I don't know. Canada sounds like a good place to start a revolution.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm pretty close to there in Seattle, so
Yeah,
right. Maybe I'll just spend a little more time there. Yeah.
Nice. So you mentioned, one of your methods of education on these things as part of the Open Science Interest Group is the conference, obviously, but the conference is just one time a year. So do you guys have future plans for, I know the SAA puts on educational webinars occasionally on different things. What are your other educational outreach methods that you plan to use in the future?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So at the moment, our focus is on the SAA because most of us will be there. So it's kind of easy to integrate into our existing activities. And some of us go to regional meetings as well, and we'll look into doing similar kinds of things at the regional meetings, like short training workshops. And we do have a plan to take advantage of the SAA's online seminars, and they've been very interested in this kind of thing. And I think they're hoping for like a series of webinars that might follow on from this proposal. So that's something we're looking into. I think we're going to get some of us accredited with the RPA, so that people who take these webinars can get some recognition for their professional development. So those are our current ideas. And of course, within our own work personally, we're sort of trying to incorporate more of this into our own teaching. But it is difficult. We do see a challenge in kind of scaling up and reaching a big audience with these things, and that it takes a lot of time and resources. And most of us are really happy being archaeologists, and we don't sort of want to switch to being a full-time like lobbyist or evangelist or whatever. So we're just trying to make it more and more part of our normal practice. So, for example, when we do peer review, a lot of us do peer review quite often, or even in an editorial position where request, like this would be a great paper if only the data were available, if only the code were available. We request, we're not going to publish it until this is available. And to make that kind of a standard thing that people will expect when they're submitting their article for peer review is, okay, they're going to ask for open data or open code. I better take care of that. And also, when we evaluate our colleagues' grants and write our own grant applications, to make sure the data management plan has a clear statement about the data availability. And often they're not. Often they're like, yes, the data are available on this server, and if you write to me, I'll give it to you. And some of us have had a chance to kind of test that out. We see someone's proposal, they get funded, and then the project's finished, and then we write to them and say, so how about the data? And it doesn't turn out to be as simple as they say. And they say, well, various things, and I can't give it to you now, and so on. And it really practically isn't available. So we're trying to push for more critical evaluation of that part of grant applications as well. So we're really trying to embed it in our normal practice and have it kind of diffuse out of that as much as possible. But I'd really be open to suggestions on other ways to communicate and encourage and teach. I'm really curious to know what other things people have used for this kind of stuff.
Well, I would certainly say online ways of doing this to reach more people. One thing I would suggest is I've been doing some webinars with the Center for Digital Archaeology, CODA. They've got a new webinar training series that they're actively looking for instructors for. So
great.
yeah, I'll have to put you in touch with them because
That's a great idea.
putting on a periodic webinar, and they run the webinar, they do the whole thing. You just have to show up with the data and teach the class. So
perfect.
yeah, it's really great. And also, we ought to talk about doing possibly a short run like a podcast series, like an audio podcast series, where we say we're going to do 5 like 1 hour episodes or something, and here's the topics and those episodes can just sit somewhere, on multiple websites, and you can just direct people to it and say, here, listen to this first. So
that's a great idea.
Yeah. So there's lots of things we can do. So yeah, this is really great. I was thinking too, in the first segment when you were talking, especially regarding spatial data, it would be really nice to have some really common usable standards, because Chris and I are both in CRM archaeology, and of course gray literature. One of the things we're kind of used to saying, especially on the East Coast, where there's not a lot of room to move archaeological sites, or to move development. If you have a site, it's going to get excavated, and then there's going to be a golf course there, or there's going to be something there, right?
Yeah.
So why really does that have to remain in the gray literature? There's no possibility chance of looting because there's a Walmart there now. So my thinking is, if we could separate the spatial data from what we submit, and then have some sort of checks and balances system where people could go in and see the method and the research data and not the spatial data, but then once the site is actually physically destroyed, then maybe all of it's just open, because what's the difference, quite frankly? Since it's not there anymore. That's a great
point. About the sort of strategic release of information over a time frame, or sort of embargoes on the data. Yeah, I think my feeling is that some of the members of our group, especially Andy Bevan, has thought quite a lot about that, and I think he's quite involved in the UK in those exact kind of problems. Is how do we sort of present the spatial data that's useful for research but doesn't sort of compromise the exact locations for looters or metal detectors and stuff like that. And he's got some really clever ideas about that could be useful. And my sense is that many of these problems have been solved. It's just a matter of finding the solution and sort of spreading it out to people who need it. You know what I mean? Like there's some clever person in some state archaeology office somewhere who's kind of worked it out and got a great method to to sort of release data in a staged way, exactly as you described. We just need to somehow capture their instructions and disseminate them more widely so other people can benefit from them. I see a lot of the technical issues of this stuff. When I come across one myself, I see, okay, that's dealt with. I just can use that solution. So I think it's very straightforward now for archaeologists to come to this, because most of the other disciplines have kind of dealt with a lot of the really difficult problems. And it's just a matter now of us kind of adapting their solutions to our needs and spreading them around so everyone knows about it.
Yeah, no need to reinvent the wheel, right? So
right, exactly. So in some cases, the archaeology is kind of desire to borrow things is a bit of a pain, and in other times it's really useful. And I think in this case, our inclination to borrow things from other fields is going to be good.
Yeah, I feel like if we can publish papers that are open about nuclear physics without fear of somebody building a nuclear weapon, then they figured it out, right?
That's an interesting topic.
Do you know of any of the other major archaeological societies that have an open science group like this, or is this the first in the big organizations?
That's a good question. As far as I know, and the other co-authors on our paper, I think this is the first, and everyone's very excited that such a thing exists in archaeology now. I think that amongst the the CAA, I think, what is it, Computer Applications in Archaeology?
Right.
That's a society and has an annual conference. I think many of the members of that group are quite sympathetic to these practices, and many of them sort of practice, do these things themselves and feel that other people should too. But as far as I know, they don't have a specific sort of community for open science in the same way that we're establishing here. So no, I think this is a unique thing, and it's actually closely modeled on a group that started about 2 years ago in the Ecological Society of America, and there's an open science section in the and they're a vast kind of professional association for academic and professional ecologists. And
Right.
and I sort of saw what they were doing, and that things were going well for them. And I thought, great, I will just adopt that general model, and then we will look into the details of what they're doing and see what seems most relevant to archaeologists. And this is what we've
Mm-hmm.
come up with. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're doing this at the SAA because it's widely seen as, I mean, as the Society for American Archaeologists, it's widely seen as like the guiding group.
Yeah.
The reality is it's kind of not, because we have so many
Right.
organizations, right? Like there's
Yeah.
SHA and there's SAA, and there
Mhm.
isn't a lot of cross population between the two. And then
Right.
there's ACRA, and we've got the AAA, and we've got all these different things. And
Yes.
it would be nice to see, because what we really need, well, and then like you mentioned, we've got open context, we've got TDAR, all
Mhm.
these different ideas, and people seem to working independently to achieve basically the same goal that everybody wants. And it'd be nice for an overarching guiding organization to lay down a set of
Right.
guidelines, right, and say, hey, why doesn't everybody just kind of do it this way?
Yeah, it's a very interesting sort of, that's what your observations are, kind of interesting reflection on like the nature of archaeology as a research program. And
Yeah.
I gave a talk at Harvard a little while ago and spoke about this in detail, and particularly how it's relevant to these ideas about open science and reproducibility. And I think there are, the parts of archaeology that sort of adhere closely to other disciplines like zooarchaeology, which is very borrows a lot from biology,
Mm-hmm.
and geoarchaeology, which takes a lot from geology and engineering and material science. Like those areas of archaeology, I think are really, they're sort of ripe for this kind of transformative engagement with these sort of open science practices and tooling and stuff. And they're also, they tend to have fairly strong community organizations, and their societies
Mm-hmm.
have active mailing lists and so on, because they're all doing very similar things, and in terms of their, their ontologies of the data are quite relatable, and so one person's data set can easily be adapted by another. But those of us that work on stone artifacts, and I do a bit of work on stone artifacts and feel this acutely, like there's terrific variation between the way we record stone artifacts, and we often struggle to make sense of another person's data set because we're not 100% sure that the way they measured the length of the artifact is the same way I measured it. These really
Mm-hmm.
basic things make it hard for us to exchange stuff. And so in sort of stone artifact archaeology, we don't really have these strong international communities with busy mailing lists and so on. So we've got a few challenges in some areas of archaeology to kind of become a bit more a stronger sense of conventions, be more sort of conventionalism in the way we tackle things. And I think that's really important before we can expect some of these open science practices to really spread widely, because people will say, well, what's the point? I'll share my data, but everyone else's data is useless, so it doesn't make any difference. So and that's a much deeper problem that I don't expect the open science interest group will be able to solve.
Nice.
But it does help us. It does help us kind of set our expectations, I guess. So I think our expectation is that, as I mentioned before, we do just want to like push the needle. So we don't want a revolution. We're not expecting this to be taken up wholesale very quickly, because we see these kind of structural details about the discipline that pose obstacles for
Mm-hmm.
people to see value in this. But we see certain areas of archaeology, like I mentioned, zooarchaeology and geoarchaeology, and probably some other areas I don't know so much about, where these things can really have a high impact. And if a few prominent people, pick it up, or a few, highly visible early career researchers, then we think they'll spread widely through those areas at least, and confer them a lot of benefits. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, there are definitely some challenges about the way archaeology is organized that are going to force us to think carefully about how we go ahead with this kind of promotion of open science practices. Yeah.
Yeah, not to mention, you had said that earlier on in this show, you had said that there are also incentives individually for, you'd said in open science, and that model, there's a higher citation rate, and
Right.
there's reproducibility as well. So there are incentives there for people to adopt this kind of organizational framework for open science.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how we've organized this paper for the SAA archaeological record. We've just kind of cherry picked out of the literature the things about open science that we think are going to affect the most people in the best way, that they can really appreciate as individuals. So there were lots of kind of communitarian and social advantages to open science, but our feeling is that for the average archaeologist, they're not highly motivating. I mean, most archaeologists are very, very public-minded and do a lot of things, for free or to, improve society.
Yeah.
But we're targeting here, sort of a fundamental, sort of individual, self-interested researcher to kind of get a deep sort of motivation. Like there's some value in this that is going to benefit, your career, and I'm sure most people will see beyond that to see the sort of disciplinary and broader public benefits of that stuff. So we're trying to be really strategic in presenting the activities that we're starting with to appeal to to everyone, really, everyone who's interested in developing themselves as an archaeologist and advancing their career and stuff. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, Ben, that's all the time we have. And I know
Sure.
Chris and I, like I said, will be at SAAs. And
Great.
you'll have to come check out the booth. We've got an island, actually. We bought 4 booths. So we've got a whole little thing there. And this should be right around the corner from when this podcast is being published. So definitely, if you're going to the SAAs, come check it out. And Ben, I hope to talk to you. I'm really interested to see what the reception is for what you're doing at the SAAs and how that goes.
Sure.
So we'll definitely have to talk about that.
Great.
So, all right. Well, thanks a lot for coming on, Ben, and we'll see you in Canada.
Yes, thanks very much for the opportunity to chat again.
All right.
I'm Jessica Quinto, and I'm the host of the Heritage Voices podcast. Heritage Voices focuses on how CRM and heritage professionals, public employees, tribes, and descendant communities can best work together to protect their heritage through tribal consultation, collaborative ethnography, and Indigenous archaeology. Now back to the show.
All right, we're back, and thanks again for Ben Marwick for doing that segment for us. Be sure to we're purposely putting this out before the Society for American Archaeology conference in Vancouver, Canada next week. Next week, for people that are listening to this on release date, it actually starts 1 week from today. The actual presentations do. Some festivities before that, but the actual papers and things start on Thursday. So go check out Ben's session and his little workshop on this, and see if you can't get involved. Track him down and ask him some questions, and hopefully he can be there to answer those for you. And how are you going to find Ben's session? Well, I'll tell you. You're not, because if you're using the SAA app. No, I'm just kidding. So, all right. So the app of the day, this is the app of the day segment, of course, and I'm going to kick it off, and I'm going to talk about this year's version of the Society for American Archaeology application for smartphones and tablets and things like that for helping yourself navigate the conference. So it's not quite a steaming pile of crap, but it just does some consistent things that I've hated every single year. I'm going to tell you the good things about it first. The good thing is it's available as an iOS application, an Android application, and a web application. So if you don't have either of those phones, you can still use it like on your phone or tablet on the internet, it seems like, okay? And I'm not sure what the company is that they use to do this. It looks either different than last time, or the one they've always used just kind of, stepped it up a little bit, because it's actually very responsive. I've used it on my iPad Pro and on my my iOS, my iPhone 7 Plus, and very responsive application. It doesn't crash. The menus and things move around real quick. It's just really the procedural stuff of it that I don't like. The one thing I've always tried to do with conferences is I know we group these papers into symposiums, but I personally, I never sit in an entire symposium unless I'm like part of it for some reason.
Yeah.
I like to move around. I like to go things. And the sheer number of people that get up and get out during, when somebody's done speaking, there's always somebody coming in to see another paper, and there's always somebody leaving right at the end of a paper, a presentation. And, that's completely unsupported in this application. You can search and find the symposium, and you can see all the times, the individual times. I'm looking at one right now, and you can see the individual times. You can see the title. You can see who the co-authors are. That's all fantastic. But it doesn't do me much good if I can't add an individual presentation to my calendar from within the app, because that's really what this is for. Not just finding things, but you can add to your calendar, and then it doesn't just add to this calendar. It adds to like your calendar on your device. So that's kind of cool too. And that's also a change, I think, because usually in the past it's been just the app calendar, but now it's your calendar, whatever you have hooked in through your device. So, but like I said, that's my biggest complaint with it is you can't save individual presentations. If I can't do that, then it's not really that good to me, because if I'm going to watch, 6 presentations during the 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock time frame, I've got to save all those symposia, and now I've got, 6 full symposia, and I don't know which rooms I'm going to, and I still have to create my own calendar. And in that case, just not using the app wins. I mean, I use the app to maybe find out my presentation, but then I'm going to go outside of that to actually build my day. Luckily, I'm in the exhibit hall pretty much the entire time, so going to see papers is not really going to be a thing for me this year, except for the one I'm giving. Um, so that's the biggest downside, the biggest negative I see to it. There are some other good things though. There's some pretty good maps in there. These convention centers are always a freaking nightmare to navigate. So there's some pretty good maps. If you go to the exhibitor hall map, you'll see that there's only 3 islands, they call it. Number 422, number 222, and the SAA island. They usually have a big. They've got like 6 booths, and that's where they have their T-shirts and past issues of American Antiquity, things like that. But the other big islands, just like to point out, 222 is Rutledge, which is where my book, The Field Archaeology Survival Guide, is now housed after they bought Left Coast Press. So they've got a 4-place booth that's kind of separated. And then booth 422 is the Codify booth. So you can see Chris and you can see a few other APN hosts, because the APN, Professional Certifications for Scientists, and Codify will all be in that booth. And if you're going to the CRM Expo and you're listening to this, we're actually right next to the CRM Expo on Saturday as well. So kind of good placement there. So, just back to the app real quick. Another good thing that it does is it's really good for searching. So if you know a person's name that you're looking for what they're presenting, you can find the search works pretty well for that. Again, it's really kind of difficult to find out, are they giving a paper? Are they a primary author? Are they co-author? You can't tell any of that information. If they're listed with the session in some way, then you're going to find them in that session. I found myself listed twice for one session, I think, because I'm a co-author on one paper, but primary on another, and blah, 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 blah. So anyway, that's that's it. AECOM sponsored this whole thing. I'm not sure they knew what they were getting into with that, and I'm not sure even how much it costs to do that, because they've paid money for an application every year. And I think the SAAs, if they had just in the beginning just paid a developer to just create them an application that they could update every year, they may have paid less money. I'm just speaking completely out of my ass here because I have no idea how much they paid for this. But this looks to me like it's one of those app farm kind of places where you just hand them your database and they slot all your stuff into and your color scheme and your logo into an already created architecture for an application that is like for a conference application, which isn't the end of the world. There's good ones and there's bad ones. I'm in Civil Air Patrol. They do the same thing every year. They go to this one place, they give them the schedule, and it's the same thing. You just download this year's schedule. They use the same one every year, though. I don't know if SA has been doing that, but I understand they don't have time, they don't have developers, but I get it. I'd rather have an app than not have an app, I guess. So there's that. But
yeah. Although, I mean, you do point out something really important, is that the way they designed this app is not the way we go to conferences. Like there's a disjoint there. So like the main disjoint is the way that the calendar events are listed and added into your calendar. Like you had said, you can't go to an individual talk. You can in real life, but the app isn't set up that way. And that's not very helpful for me because like it even has a now and up next feature. And I'm like, okay, so like up next is like on Thursday morning, up next is Thursday afternoon. So it's like, no, duh. What am I going to do like in the next 30 minutes though? Like where do I need to go in this labyrinthine conference hall? So, the map is useful, but like you said, it's going to be a lot of checking other things out and kind of making your own notes and whatnot. So it's almost there. And like you said, like I appreciate that they did develop the app. And one of the things that I thought was neat, even though it's not particularly useful, there's a little Twitter button in the app that lets you. It basically just has a constantly refreshing scrolling feed of the hashtag SAA 2017. and
And you're at the top right now. I just went over to it. You're the last tweet on there.
is it my tweet where I call it something like a festering pile of garbage or something?
No, not this one. You're just saying come visit us at the booth. So at least it's a good tweet that we're looking at.
Nice.
Nice.
But yeah, but it's like you can't engage from that, so it's like
Yeah.
you gotta then go back into the Twitter app anyhow to actually do
Mhm.
that. So I'm like, well, I could just surf the hashtag in Twitter. I don't really need to surf the hashtag on the SAA thing. But I do
Now,
appreciate that they're thinking of archaeology Twitter and letting people at least see that there's a lot of engagement over there, even though it's not
Mhm.
like a direct form of engagement.
Now maybe this is the iPad version or something, but there is a little right button on the Twitter feed, so I can, if you have Twitter accounts connected to your device, maybe that's what you have to have. But it is letting me actually write a tweet from in here, and it
Oh,
does the
wow.
automatic hashtag SAA 2017. But it looks like I could just tweet anything to anyone with any hashtag. So, and it's even giving me account selection because I've got 3 different Twitter accounts associated with this iPad. So it is giving me that functionality, but I don't know if it does that on every device in every situation. Who knows?
Yeah.
One other kind of cool thing is, and I don't know how accurate or how good it is, but they have a city guide. So you click on that and you can see you can search by venue, event, or artist and find other things. If you get tired of the essays, you can find out what's going on. Too bad it's not this week because 50 Cent is playing like Wednesday. So I see that right here, and I would just like abandon everything and go see 50 Cent.
Oh,
I
man.
don't even really know what that means. But anyway, it says gangsta rap as the actual title here, as the actual category.
Nice.
Yeah, a day to remember. Post hardcore. Post hardcore? What
Yeah.
is post hardcore? Softcore?
No, it's. I don't even. Am I really going to get into this on this podcast?
No. This is not the place to talk about this.
Because well, I'll have to hash out the whole like genres and subgenre of metal on an archaeologist with Tristan, because him and I have gone on long tangents about that before.
Oh my God. The little review in here says they're known as they're from Florida, and they mix angsty emo lyrics with aggressive metal riffs. The band has built a reputation for itself and is known for putting on an energetic, mosh-inducing show. That sounds fantastic. All right. Well, that's all I've got. Speaking of steaming pile of crap, yeah. You know what? I'll tell you what. If you just can't navigate the SAA app and you don't know where to go, come on down to the Codify Lounge. Sit down, take a load off, charge up your device because no doubt this is probably a battery killer. And come to our device daycare. We'll plug it in. You can chill out, and we'll see you then. We'll be there the whole time. That's all I've got.
Nice. Well, I am gonna take this a slightly different route. The app that I'm gonna review today is an app called Hopper. It's got a cute little bunny rabbit for the logo, and it is a flight tracker app. Not in the sense that other flight tracker apps, track like whether your flight's on time or not. This one helps you plan when to buy tickets.
Mm-hmm. I've used it.
Yeah, so I've been what I normally use is just the website Google Flight, because I really like the way it breaks down different search criteria, and it tends to be the cheapest option. And so just as a comparison, I went ahead and compared Google Flight to Hopper, and I found out something kind of surprising is that Hopper was always more expensive than Google Flight. It ranged from $5 more to $90 more. So I like, there are a lot of things that I do like about the app though. And so one is that it has a lot of good tips that it offers on like when is the right time to buy a ticket, and like if you're waiting on something like funding or grant or like reimbursement or whatever, budget approval, if you have to ask like your university department, or if you're at a firm that's going to pay for your travel, sometimes you end up having to wait to the last minute to get your tickets and stuff like that. Or if you're like me, you just wait anyhow. So it's good for planning out like how long you do have to wait. And so I compared a few flights that I've been tracking on my own through Google Flights on there, and they were more expensive on Hopper, but at least it had a nice window that broke down. Like I have maybe like one more month that I can wait before I absolutely have to buy a ticket, and then prices are going to soar. But I don't really see myself continuing to use this app for purchases. But I thought it would be worth reviewing, at least. I'm sure other people might find some use out of this. It would be useful on the go,
Yeah.
because the Google Flights app it's not an app. It's just like the website thing. So it's a real chore to use on your smartphone. Google Flight is something that I only use on my laptop, but yeah, so hopefully, check it out. Maybe you'll find it useful for your own uses, because a lot of archaeologists are going to be traveling in the coming months.
I used it a while back. I actually haven't used it in a while. I think it's still on my phone even. I just kind of forgot about it, but it's I think if you don't actually buy your tickets on there, I think it might be good because they have they've amassed a lot of information about different flights, and because of that, they have a fairly good predictive algorithm on when your flight's going to be cheapest, and it'll send you a push notification right on your phone that says, hey, time to start thinking about buying your plane ticket because it's probably just going to keep going up from here. And at that point, now I would say check out Google Flight, check out Kayak, wherever you're going to go, and then start looking at plane tickets. And this will keep you from doing it every single day for like 2 weeks, trying to figure out when you're going to get the cheapest time, because it's not necessarily there's lots of factors in the price of your plane ticket. There's not only your travel dates, when you take off and when you come back, but it's also when you actually buy the ticket. So there's lots of things in that algorithm. I could have these same dates cost $300-400 different, or thousands of dollars different, depending on how far you're going. If I buy them a week before the flight versus a month before the flight versus 6 months before the flight. So
Yeah.
It's not necessarily buy them early for the cheapest price, because the airlines will come down and reduce prices and do different things just to fill the flight. So you try to buy it the same day, you're going to get fleeced. But
Oh yeah.
a few days before or a few weeks before, there's going to be a sweet spot where they're recording data from other people doing things like this, and they know how much these tickets are going for. So that's what I'd use it for. Like Chris said, maybe don't buy it on Hopper, but go somewhere else and check it out. But maybe use this as your initial guide to when to buy it. So
Yeah.
otherwise, yeah, good app. I'll say one more thing about the SAA app that I wanted to mention before I forget. It's a pain in the ass to log in. Again, when you don't create your own application and you let somebody else do it, and you have zero input on it, then that's going to happen. So what this had me do, and you don't need to log in to use it, but if you want to create a calendar and save things and try to deal with that whole mess, then it'll require you to create a username and password. But it's not that simple, because this is basically a web-based application. So everything is done kind of outside of the application. I can't imagine this works at all if you don't have connectivity. Like maybe you can search stuff, but you can't really do anything else. You can't save your calendar probably. There's probably a lot of stuff you can't do if you don't have internet, but I'm not sure. But either way, it had me put in, and I didn't catch this at first. I just put in an email address to start the registration process for the application. But it turns out, and it just died. Like I put in an email address, and I didn't get an email ever. Like it was supposed to send me instructions for how to register via email. Nothing ever happened. Well, I went back and looked at it again, and it said, use your registration email, which means SAA sent them a database of your email addresses for what you use for the SAA. So I had to use my SAA email address, which is my work email address, and then I got an email immediately. And then the instructions are also confusing. They give you this code, which is basically the password. You go back to the app, you type in your email address as your username, and you use their temporary passcode, and then it gives you a chance to create your own password after that. But it was incredibly confusing, and I'm a little pissed that SAA just sent them all our email addresses, but there's that. I don't know, maybe that's secure. I'm not going to go ahead and call them out on that right now, but who knows? It seems like this service, though, has your SAA login email address. So if you're planning on using like a shitty Yahoo address, like I was trying to do, because I didn't want them to have my work email address, it's not going to work. So it seems like it's the one you used for the SAA, maybe the one you used to log into the website, or maybe you used a different one to actually register for the conference. I'm not really sure what it's looking for there, but if your junk email address isn't working, it's probably something like that. So just wanted to mention that and get that out there.
I dealt with the exact same issue, and it took me a long time to figure out what I was doing wrong.
Yeah.
But I've been trying to figure out which transit Vancouver uses, like what the name of the transit system is. But this is something I do generally when I travel, is I figure out what the local public transit is. Go ahead and download the app if they have one, figure out what the ticketing process is like, because a lot of times it's helpful to just have tickets preloaded on your phone. But all that aside, just a friendly reminder, Google Maps, it's way better than the native Apple Maps app. Google Maps has a public transit option that breaks down a lot of that information for you, and it often has like up to the minute estimates on travel times, and tells you where to go, which station to get off at, stuff like that. So it really takes a lot of the headache out of using public transit, and it's something that I'm a strong advocate for public transit. So Vancouver is one of those cities that does have good public transit, so go ahead and use it. We're all going to be downtown and whatnot, so I'm sure it's not going to be that much of a hassle to just hop on a bus. I've seen they also have a lot of light rail and whatnot, so
nice.
Keep that in mind as well as we're all traveling to Vancouver next week.
Yeah, cool. And I will say, I've never used the Apple transit maps, but I do know when I go to a new city that Apple supports for transit, that I'll get a notification that says the transit maps for your city have been updated. So if you don't have an Android phone or something like that, and you have an iPhone, then you're probably not listening to this, because it seems like all archaeologists have Android phones, except for a couple of us. But anyway, if you do have an iPhone, and maybe you don't have connectivity up there because it's Canada, jump into a coffee shop or something, and it should just update immediately. It should download all the transit information. Again, like Chris said, I don't know what the quality of that is. Google's probably better, but who knows? At least you'll have it. So
yeah. Well, thanks for listening to this episode, and we hope to meet some of you at the SAAs. Come by and say hi at our booth in the vendors area. And until next time.
Yeah. See you guys later. That's it for another episode of the Archaeotech Podcast. Links to some of the items mentioned on the show are in the show notes for this podcast, which can be found at www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com/archaeotech. If you like the show and want to comment, please do. You can leave comments about this or any other episode on the website or on the iTunes page for this episode. You can also email us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com or use the contact form on the podcast webpage. If you'd like us to answer a question on a future episode, email us. Use the contact form on the website or tweet your questions with the hashtag Archaeotech or tag @ArchPodNet in your tweet. Please share the link to this show wherever you saw it. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, you can do so on iTunes or on Stitcher Radio. You can also type the name of the podcast into your favorite podcasting app and subscribe that way. Don't forget to go over to iTunes and leave a review of the show. It helps us get noticed so more people can find our podcast and benefit from the content. Also, send us show suggestions and interview suggestions. We want this to be a resource for field technicians everywhere, and we want to know what you want to know about. This show is produced by Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle, and edited by Chris Sims.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archaeologypodcastnetwork.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.
Thanks again for listening to this episode and for supporting the Archaeology Podcast Network. If you want these shows to keep going, consider becoming a member for just $7.99 a month. That's cheaper than a venti quad eggnog latte. Go to archpodnet.com/members for more info.